This is a 19-year-old me who just arrived in Venice to start her degree. This was a 22-year-old me throwing her own graduation ceremony because of the pandemic. And this is me now, approximately 6 years after beginning my bachelor's degree. I graduated in July of 2020, meaning that I've had more than enough time to reflect on my time in university and to think about things I would do differently. Regrets about things I didn't do, regrets about things that I didn't do enough of, and regrets about things I took for granted. Today I'm going to share those things with you, and this is the first video in my new series entitled Tales of a First Generation Graduate, which I am so excited to be bringing to a YouTube timeline near you. If you're new here, hi, I'm Lamia, and I make videos under the themes of education, global citizenship, and sustainable development. Regret number 1, not talking to my professors enough. So during my time at university, no word of a lie, I think I must have went to 4 office hours in total, and I'm pretty sure one of those was mandatory. I've been trying my hardest to think about what kept me from going to office hours, and I think it was a combination of 2 things: shyness and laziness. Laziness because I just don't think I could be asked to go to campus outside of class time, and shyness because, you know, professors have PhDs and they know everything. Granted, everything turned out fine in the end. I did graduate on time. I graduated with a first class degree. However, the cost of this mistake is only something that I had to bear after graduating. So after graduating, I put in some applications to do my master's degree, and most of those, I think with the exception of one of my applications, most of them call for references, and being an academic program that you're applying for, most of them will ask for those references to be of an academic nature. None of my professors turned me down when I asked for a reference letter because it is, you know, after all, part of their job description. Very often I've had to send through my CV and just a brief profile of myself, trying to explain where I'm from, what my goals are, why I'm applying for a certain study field, because really these are people that barely know me. And I have this friend, we met at university. I used to roast him because he had this tendency to go and speak to our professors after every single lecture, and it turns out the joke is actually on me, because he could reach out to any of our undergraduate professors for a reference and they would be delighted to provide him with one, and they'd have lots to say because, for starters, they actually know who he is. So please do take my advice. Please interact with your professors where possible and take them up on their office hours, not so much just because you'll need a reference letter, but also because when you get to know them beyond their, you know, decorated CVs, professors can actually be pretty cool people. Regret number 2, not taking advantage of being in the same city as my friends. So I graduated in the midst of the pandemic in July 2020. Sadly, I never had a graduation ceremony, which really hurts because I am, after all, a first generation graduate, and the university I attended actually holds their graduation ceremony in St. Mark's Square in Venice, in San Marco di Venezia. Like, it was going to be iconic. Can you tell I'm still hurt? Anyway, my closest friends were mostly international students from Africa, Europe, and North America, and it hurts so much to inform you that I haven't seen most of them, all of them, for at least 3 to 4 years now. Some of them I last saw in 2019, and the last one that I actually saw in person was in March 2020. And as much as I love words, I somehow fail to find any to describe how painful it is to be apart from my closest friends, the people I have not gone a week since without talking to. And the distance has obviously given me ample time to reflect on how much I took it for granted when we were based in the same city. And granted, after graduation, everybody, you know, goes their separate ways. This is an inevitable part of life. But I really find myself wishing that I had lived in the moment a bit more and really cherished the time that we had when, you know, we were a 15-minute walk away from each other or a 20-minute tram, because I just miss them so much. Regret number 3, not doing things alone in my first year. So of course, being 19 and not only being in a new country, but being in a new continent altogether, is no easy feat, and understandably I had some inhibitions. Even then I knew how important traveling was to me, but subconsciously for some reason I was waiting on my friends. But this made zero sense because, like I mentioned, many of my friends were European and one was American. They have strong passports, meaning that they can dip in and out of Paris as and when they want. But it was me who was on a time crunch. I was on a student visa. I had 3 years to make my way to Paris. Anyway, fortunately, I did learn this lesson at the end of my first year. I did make it to Paris at the end of my first year as well with my sister. Safe to say, once I learned that lesson, I learned it for good, because right now, 6 years later, I actually have the opposite problem. I am infamous for doing everything really alone. It's actually quite difficult for me to ask people to join me on activities because I'm so set in my ways at this point. There's no better time to learn how to do things on your own than at university. Regret number 4, staying within my major so rigidly. So one thing about me is that I am a recovering rigid person. Like, I only saw one path before. We're getting better. My bachelor's degree was multidisciplinary, so I studied PPE, philosophy, politics, and economics, which meant that I got a variety of different study fields within that degree. I could do everything from law to economics. However, in terms of career prospects, I was totally boxed in. I think about all of those career fairs and career stands and career stalls that I would walk past when I was studying at UCL. I would just write them off as being, exclusively for finance students or exclusively for STEM students. And even if I wasn't interested in any of those industries, I feel as though I might have learned a thing or two if I just gave them a bit more attention. It's a great thing my mom doesn't watch all my YouTube videos, because right about now she would be nodding aggressively saying, I did try to tell you. And unfortunately that is true. She tried to tell me, but hopefully you're not as stubborn as I am and you'll take my advice when I say don't box yourself in too much, and give the time of day to other industries, because the majority of people end up working in industries that are totally unrelated to their degree program. So university is a great time to at least familiarize yourself with other industries. Regret number 5, giving my financial anxiety too much power over me. So this one is a bit of a controversial point, but what's the point of having a YouTube channel if you're not going to add a bit of spice? I remember a video going viral a few months ago on TikTok, my favorite app, go follow me. I've been really making some nice videos over there, if I do say so myself. And in the video, it was somebody basically talking about how you should travel and do all of these cool things in your 20s because your money will return, but your time won't. And honestly, I absolutely agree. There's a difference between being smart with money and absolutely just robbing yourself of experiencing life. And I let my financial anxiety stop me from doing so much, especially in my first year, which I will attribute to being young. I don't want to be one of those people that says, oh, I was so young, how could I have known? But truly, if I think about myself at 19, I think I was quite book smart, but I had a lot of street savviness to learn. And I think my mom and sister can co-sign that. I needed to learn how to be street smart. So when my sister came to visit me in November of 2017, I started university in September 2017. She obviously, was it her first time? Yes, I think it was her first time in Italy, and of course she wanted to go to one of those cute Italian restaurants and experience it, rightfully so. And to this day, I am haunted by the fact that I really denied her of this experience. Don't get me wrong, I still made sure that she had the best pizza of her life, and to this day it's something she raves about. But I was just so concerned about how costly this would be and how the food might be disappointing. And yeah, that might have happened, especially in a touristy city like Venice, where it's a bit difficult to tell what's authentic and what's not. But my goodness, I really had no business denying her of the white tablecloth experience with the breadsticks and the Prosecco being poured on the table next to us. I think about that all the time. It's something my sister and I always talk about. I have apologized to her, and and it's definitely a mindset that, thank goodness, I have grown out of. By the time I left to London in my third year, I had completely abandoned this mindset, and if anything, I had gone in the opposite direction. And like, all it took for me to buy into an experience was thinking about how costly my student visa was. I was like, okay, the Home Office has given me 9 months to get all of these things done. I was splurging on formal dinners, high teas. I am no financial expert, but I will tell you, and you're free to do whatever you want with this information, that there has never been a day where I think to myself, you know, my bank account was really healthy at that time in my life. But, you know, just looking through pictures of my friends and I at some bougie brunch spot in Fitzrovia is enough to bring me to tears and to make my entire month. Regret number 6, postponing things. So this point kind of relates to the previous point, but it's more about a lesson I learned while at university in London. So as much as I had overcome my intense financial anxiety, I was still holding things off, this time for weather purposes. So I cannot tell you how many things in my little purple notebook that I had jotted down for my London itinerary I put off because, and I quote, I'm gonna do this in the summer. And do you want to know what happened? Corona happened. Like, the pandemic happened. The world stopped. Happened. Do you know how embarrassing it is to say that you've lived in London and yet you haven't done essential London things like the London Eye, the Natural History Museum, and riding a bike around the city centre? I have a lot to heal from. Please don't postpone things, not because of the weather, not because you think there might be a better time. It is a cliche for a reason, but tomorrow really is not promised. Regret number 7, living in a walkable city. So this is one of those points that is not so much a regret as it is something I took for granted. So a few months ago, the concept of a walkable city was trending on TikTok. So what is a walkable city? Walkability is a new term to describe how friendly a city or a neighborhood is to pedestrian activity. According to the Walkable and Livable Communities Institute, walkable communities are defined as they consider persons, not their automobiles, at the center of the design scale. When we design communities around the human foot, we create places that are socially, environmentally, and economically vibrant. So I was lucky enough to study in not one but 2 walkable cities: Venice, where there are literally no cars, and London, where I was based in the center of London, so everywhere was accessible by foot. And I'm not holding my younger self accountable for not knowing what a walkable city is or for not being entirely clued up on the benefits of walking. But if I had known how strong the correlation between mental health and walking is, I feel as though I might have found an alternative form of exercise much quicker than I did when I returned to a non-walkable city like Harare. Regret number 8, falling prey to the arrival fallacy. The arrival fallacy is the false assumption that once you reach a goal, you will experience enduring happiness. Have you ever had the experience of working hard to reach a goal in life, only to find that once you get to the finish line, you're filled with depression and stress rather than happiness? We will be talking in depth about postgrad SADs in a different video. So I was only recently reminded about how much I had bought into the arrival fallacy that I would have the perfect life upon graduating from university, when somebody who's studying the same degree that I was doing reached out to me on LinkedIn to find out how I had managed to do my final year abroad and still graduate on time. And once I graduated, honestly, a lot of the stress and the PTSD I had from dealing with the most difficult bureaucrats, I just kind of like voluntarily lobotomized all of this. It really sent me back to that place, and I was like, wow, I really had to be so on top of all of my paperwork in order to graduate on time. And I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I regret graduating on time. It certainly is, by all accounts, an achievement, an accomplishment. But maybe on days where I feel a little bit more pessimistic, I do think to myself, and for what? Like, what was I rushing towards? Because postgrad life, for me at least, was not all it was cracked out to be. If anything, I am tempted to say that it was actually quite anticlimactic. Regret number 9, meaningless purchases. So in my first year of uni, I remember doing my Googles and I found out that there was a certain British clothing store that was in a city quite close to Venice, so about 1.5 hours by train. And I made a whole big thing about it. I had never been to this shop before, having never been to the UK prior to that point. I had obviously just heard a lot about it from, family members, etc. I got my roommate involved. We did a day trip. I remember buying everything in this shop, from coats to jackets to socks to scarves, and I think I ended up spending about 150 euros, which, if you know the shop that I'm alluding to, which I won't mention just in case there's legalities, I left with bags and bags and bags of shopping, and I really thought that I was doing myself a favor. Genuinely, I thought I hacked the system. I was like, you know what, Graham Stephan, like, I am the new financial expert, like, I know everything there is to know about being frugal. So of course it was going to be my first European winter. I had not actually lived in Europe through the winter, so honestly, what business did I have buying layers that ended up not being very useful? All of the coats and stuff that I bought were impractical and too thin, so I had to go out and buy more coats and stuff. And not just that, by the end of my first year, all of those clothes that I had bought had withered away in the washing machine and the dryer because they were such poor quality. Lesson learned, and to this day, my number one priority when purchasing clothes is the quality. You're hard pressed to catch me bargaining when it comes to clothing. And I'm also a minimalist, so this works really well. And also, I have an expectation that every article of clothing that I buy will at least last me a minimum of 5 years. So I'm not trying to impose my lifestyle choices on you, but I'm just giving you an example of one of the meaningless purchases that I made during my time at university. And regret number 10, keeping to myself. So I am a pretty introverted human. I do really enjoy my own company. But when you leave university, it is that much harder to make friends. Everyone is just super busy. There's just not enough overlap you have in your daily lives that allow you to meet other people. So when I was in high school, some of my teachers told me and my friends that our friendship wasn't going to last. Most of our friendships weren't going to last, and that our lifelong friends would really be made in university. And I just wrote it off. I thought, oh, they're so cynical, but did they lie? Did they actually lie? In my case, they didn't. For me, my lifelong friends were in fact made in university. Ali Abdaal talks about how when he was in university, he would deliberately leave his door open while he was studying in his room, just in case any passers-by wanted to drop in for a chat. And in retrospect, I think this is genius. So my advice is try your hardest not to be too closed off in university. There are so many interesting people to meet who you already share so much in common with. Also, studying all the time is really not healthy. Go and socialize for at least 1 hour a week. I promise you'll survive. And those were my top regrets from my uni days. I'm not somebody who dwells too much on regret because honestly, I can't go back to change anything, and we live and we learn. But is there anything you regret from your time in university? Please let me know in the comments. And if you enjoyed this video, you might also enjoy my video on how to make the most of an internship. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.